My husband left me stranded at our anniversary dinner. On purpose. Some people think humiliation is a weapon. But sometimes, it's exactly the ammunition you need to blow up your entire life and rebuild it into something beautiful. Hi everyone, I'm Delilah. And what I'm about to tell you will make your blood boil. But stick with me because this story has the most satisfying ending you'll ever hear. Picture this. You're sitting alone at a candlelit table in the most expensive restaurant in the city, wearing your best dress, clutching your phone with shaking hands as you realize your husband of 8 years has just played the cruelest trick imaginable. The waiter keeps asking if you'd like to order, and you keep saying, just a few more minutes, knowing deep down that those minutes are turning into an eternity of pure humiliation. That was me 3 months ago. And I'm about to tell you exactly how I turned the worst night of my marriage into the first night of my new life. Let me paint you the full picture of what led to this moment. My husband Garrett, and yes, I'm using his real name because after what he did, he doesn't deserve the protection of anonymity, had been acting strange for weeks leading up to our 8th wedding anniversary. Now, Garrett wasn't the romantic type. Never had been. In 8 years of marriage, I could count on one hand the number of times he'd surprised me with anything thoughtful. Flowers on Valentine's Day. Only if I reminded him. Birthday dinner. Only if I made the reservation myself. So when he suddenly announced that he wanted to plan something special for our anniversary, every alarm bell in my head should have been ringing. But here's the thing about being in a marriage that's slowly dying. You start grasping at straws. You convince yourself that maybe, just maybe, this is the moment when everything turns around. Maybe he's finally going to put in effort. Maybe he's going to show you that you still matter to him. Delilah, he said that Tuesday morning over coffee, not even looking up from his phone. I've got something special planned for Saturday. Wear that blue dress I bought you last Christmas. The blue dress. The one that still had tags on it because it was 2 sizes too small and the wrong shade of blue for my complexion. The one that made it crystal clear he didn't actually know me at all, despite living with me for 8 years. But I was so desperate for any sign that he cared that I actually went out and had it altered to fit me. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags I ignored. The way he insisted I couldn't know any details. The way he smirked when I got excited about it. The way he made sure to mention it in front of his buddies like he was setting up some kind of inside joke. But in that moment, I was just a wife who wanted to believe her husband still loved her. Saturday arrived, and I spent the entire day getting ready. I got my hair done, my nails done, even splurged on new lingerie because I thought, God, I was so naive. I thought we were going to reconnect. I thought this was Garrett's way of saving our marriage. The blue dress actually looked pretty good after the alterations. I paired it with the diamond earrings he'd given me for our 5th anniversary. Back when he still pretended to care. And for the first time in months I felt beautiful. Felt hopeful. Garrett picked me up at exactly 7 o'clock, which should have been another red flag because he was never on time for anything. He was wearing his best suit and actually looked handsome, which made my heart flutter like I was 23 again and falling in love with him for the first time. You look nice, he said, and even those 3 words felt like a gift because it had been so long since he'd complimented me. We drove to Marcello's, this upscale Italian place downtown that I'd mentioned wanting to try about a year ago. I was shocked he remembered. The hostess led us to a corner table with a perfect view of the city lights, and for a moment, for one beautiful naive moment, I thought we were going to be okay. This is perfect, Garrett, I said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. Thank you for planning this. He pulled his hand away to pick up the menu. Yeah, well, don't get too excited yet. I should have asked what he meant by that. I should have pressed him when he kept checking his watch every few minutes. I should have noticed how he barely touched his appetizer or how he kept glancing toward the door like he was waiting for something. But I was too busy savoring what I thought was my marriage coming back to life. We were halfway through our main courses when Garrett's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and I swear I saw the corner of his mouth twitch upward in what looked suspiciously like satisfaction. Sorry, babe, I have to take this, he said, standing up before I could respond. Work emergency. He walked toward the back of the restaurant, phone pressed to his ear. Waited. And waited. The waiter came by to refill our wine glasses, and I made small talk about the weather. Other couples around us were laughing, sharing desserts, celebrating their own special occasions. 10 minutes passed, then 15, then 20. I started to feel that familiar knot in my stomach, the one I'd been getting more and more frequently over the past 2 years whenever Garrett did something that made me question everything. I pulled out my phone and sent him a text. "Everything okay? You've been gone a while." No response. 25 minutes. 30. The waiter kept glancing at me with increasing concern, and I could feel other diners starting to notice the woman sitting alone at the romantic corner table. That's when I decided to go look for him. I checked the men's restroom. Well, I asked a kind gentleman going in to check for me. Not there. I walked through the entire restaurant, thinking maybe he'd stepped outside for better reception. The hostess at the front asked if I needed help finding my party. "My husband," I said, my voice starting to shake. "He was taking a phone call." "Oh, the gentleman in the navy suit. He left about 15 minutes ago." The words hit me like a physical blow. "Left? Are you sure?" "Yes, ma'am." He seemed to be in quite a hurry. I stood there in the restaurant's elegant foyer, with couples streaming in for their romantic Saturday night dinners, and felt my entire world tilt sideways. He left. He actually left me here. On our anniversary. At a restaurant I couldn't afford on my own. In a dress he'd specifically asked me to wear. I walked back to our table on legs that felt like jelly, praying this was some kind of mistake. Maybe he'd gone to get something from the car. Maybe he'd stepped out to take a call and was coming right back. But deep down I knew. This was intentional. This was planned. This was Garrett's twisted idea of what? A joke. Revenge for some imagined slight. A way to finally push me to ask for a divorce so he wouldn't have to be the bad guy. I sat back down at our table, staring at his half-eaten plate of osso buco, and that's when the full magnitude of what he'd done hit me. The next hour was the longest of my life. I kept telling the waiter that my husband would be back soon, but my voice got smaller and less convincing each time. Other diners were definitely staring now. I could hear whispers from nearby tables. "Poor thing. Can you imagine? How embarrassing." My cheeks burned with shame. My hands trembled as I sipped water I didn't want, trying to make it look like I had some purpose for still being there. I checked my phone obsessively, calling Garrett over and over until it started going straight to voicemail. The worst part. I could see the pity in everyone's eyes. The waiter, the hostess, the couple at the next table who kept glancing over with concerned expressions. I had become that woman, the one everyone whispers about and feels sorry for. The one whose husband publicly humiliated her in the cruelest way possible. I thought about just leaving, getting up, walking out, calling an Uber, and pretending this never happened. But where would I go? Home to Garrett. To face whatever sick satisfaction he was probably feeling right now. That's when something inside me shifted. Sitting there in that beautiful restaurant, surrounded by happy couples celebrating their own love stories, I realized something crucial. I was done being humiliated. I was done being the victim of Garrett's cruelty. I was done playing the part of the sad, abandoned wife. If Garrett wanted to turn our anniversary into a public spectacle, then I was going to give him exactly that. But not in the way he expected. Stroom, where I spent 5 minutes staring at myself in the mirror. My makeup was still perfect. My hair was still styled beautifully. I looked like a woman who deserved to be celebrated, not abandoned. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I pulled out my phone and did something I hadn't done in years. I called my best friend from college, Zoe. We'd drifted apart after I married Garrett, partly because he never liked her, and partly because I'd become so focused on trying to fix my marriage that I'd neglected all my other relationships. "Delilah. Oh my God, I haven't heard from you in forever. How are you?" "Zoe," I said, and my voice only shook a little. "I need a favor. Big one. Are you free tonight?" "Of course. What's going on?" I told her everything. The anniversary dinner, Garrett's disappearance, my current situation. By the time I finished, Zoe was practically screaming into the phone. That absolute bastard. Delilah, get out of there right now. Come to my place. We'll drink wine and plot his murder. Actually, I said, looking at myself in the mirror again, I have a better idea. How quickly can you get to Marcello's downtown? And can you bring Ashley and Mira? Ashley and Mira were two other friends from our college group. Successful, fierce women who I'd also lost touch with because Garrett always made me feel guilty for spending time with anyone but him. What are you planning? Zoe asked, but I could hear the excitement in her voice. I'm planning to have the best anniversary dinner of my life. With or without my husband. Within 45 minutes, my 3 college friends were walking into Marcello's dressed to kill. I watched from our corner table as heads turned to follow them across the restaurant. Zoe in her red power dress, Ashley in black leather pants and a silk blouse, Mira in a stunning emerald green number that made her look like a movie star. They descended on my table like the fierce, fabulous cavalry they were. Delilah, Zoe announced loudly enough for half the restaurant to hear. I am so sorry we're late. You know how Saturday night traffic is. They hugged me, sat down, and immediately started treating the situation like we'd planned this girls' night all along. The transformation was instant. What had been a table of humiliation suddenly became the most fun table in the restaurant. So, Ashley said, picking up Garrett's abandoned wine glass, your husband had to leave for work? On your anniversary. How absolutely typical of him. The subtle dig was perfect. To anyone listening, it sounded like Garrett was just another workaholic husband who couldn't prioritize his wife. Not a man who had cruelly abandoned her. You know what? I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice sounded. I think this is exactly what I needed. When was the last time we 4 had dinner together? Too long, Mira said, signaling the waiter. And we are going to fix that tonight. What happened next was magical. The waiter, who had been throwing me pitying looks all evening, suddenly perked up. 3 more beautiful, confident women had joined the sad abandoned wife. And now he was dealing with a party of 4 successful-looking ladies having a great time. We ordered champagne. We ordered dessert. We laughed loud enough that other tables started smiling in our direction instead of whispering. Zoe regaled us with stories from her latest promotion at the marketing firm. Ashley talked about her new apartment in the city. Mira showed us pictures from her recent trip to Italy. And slowly I started remembering who I used to be. Before Garrett. Before I shrunk myself down to fit into his idea of what a wife should be. Remember senior year, Zoe said, raising her champagne glass. When you won that writing contest and got published in the literary magazine? You were so proud, and you should have been. That story was incredible. I had forgotten about that. I'd forgotten that I used to write. I used to have dreams and ambitions beyond just making Garrett happy. Whatever happened to your writing? Ashley asked. I don't know, I said honestly. Life, I guess. Marriage. I kept meaning to get back to it. Bullshit, Mira said bluntly. You let him convince you it wasn't important. Didn't you? The truth of her words hit me like a slap. That's exactly what had happened. Every time I'd mentioned wanting to write, Garrett had found ways to make me feel silly or selfish for pursuing it. Well, I said, lifting my own glass, maybe it's time to change that. We stayed at Marcello's until nearly midnight. We laughed until my cheeks hurt. We caught up on 8 years of friendship that I'd allowed to wither. We made plans for next weekend and the weekend after that. Most importantly, I remembered what it felt like to be celebrated instead of tolerated. The other diners in the restaurant weren't looking at me with pity anymore. They were looking at our table with curiosity and maybe a little envy. 4 women having the time of their lives, toasting to friendship and new beginnings. When the check came, I didn't even hesitate. I put it on the credit card that Garrett and I shared, the one he monitored obsessively and questioned every purchase on. 4 dinners, 3 bottles of champagne, dessert for everyone. It was going to be expensive, and I didn't care even a little bit. Let him see the charge. Let him wonder. Let him realize that while he thought he was humiliating me, I was having the best night I'd had in years. As we were getting ready to leave, the waiter who had been so concerned about me earlier came over to our table. "I hope you ladies had a wonderful evening," he said. "It's so nice to see friends celebrating together." "It really is," I agreed and meant it completely. Outside the restaurant, my friends hugged me tight. "Are you okay?" "Oh yes." "Really?" "You know what? I think I'm more than okay. I think I'm free." I took an Uber home instead of calling Garrett to pick me up. I wanted to see his face when I walked through the door. I wanted to see if he'd been sitting there all evening, waiting for me to come crawling home humiliated and broken. The house was dark when I arrived, but I could see the glow of the TV from the living room. Garrett was there, lounging on the couch in his pajamas, watching some stupid action movie like this was any other Saturday night. He looked up when I walked in and I saw it, that flash of surprise, maybe even disappointment when he realized I looked happy. I was supposed to be destroyed. I was supposed to be crying and begging him to explain why he'd done this to me. Instead, I was glowing from an amazing night with friends, smelling like expensive champagne and wearing a smile that had nothing to do with him. "How was dinner?" he asked casually, like he hadn't orchestrated the whole thing. "Incredible," I said, and his face fell slightly. "You missed out." "Oh, did I?" Zoe, Ashley, and Mira showed up. We had such a good time. It's been years since I laughed that hard. I could see him trying to process this. This wasn't the reaction he'd been expecting. Where was the anger? The hurt? The dramatic confrontation about his cruel abandonment? "We should probably talk," he said, muting the TV. "Should we?" I asked, genuinely curious about what he thought we needed to discuss. About tonight. About things. What about them? I could see the frustration building in his expression. I wasn't playing my part in whatever sick drama he'd scripted. "Delilah, come on. Don't pretend you don't know what I'm talking about." "I honestly don't, Garrett. I had a wonderful anniversary dinner. Thank you for picking such a great restaurant." That's when his mask finally slipped. "You're supposed to be upset," he snapped. "You're supposed to be asking me why I left you there." There it was. The admission. The confirmation that this had all been intentional, planned, designed to hurt me as deeply as possible. "Why?" asked simply. "Why what? Why did you want me to be upset? Why did you plan to humiliate me on our anniversary? What did you think that would accomplish?" He stared at me for a long moment, and I could see him scrambling for an answer that would make sense. That would justify the cruelty of what he'd done. "Because you need to wake up," he said finally. "You need to see that this marriage isn't working. You need to stop pretending everything is fine when it's not. So instead of talking to me like an adult, you decided to publicly humiliate me? I needed you to finally react to something. You just accept everything, Delilah. Nothing I do bothers you anymore. You're like a ghost in your own life." The irony was staggering. He was complaining that I didn't react strongly enough to his bad treatment, so his solution was to treat me even worse. "You want a reaction," I said calmly. "Here's your reaction. I'm done." "Done with what?" "With this. With you. With pretending that what we have is a marriage instead of an extended exercise in mutual resentment." Now he looked panicked. This definitely wasn't the script he'd had in mind. "Delilah, wait. Let's not make any rash decisions. We should talk to a counselor or something. We should have done that 2 years ago. Before you decided our anniversary was the perfect time to play psychological games with me." I started walking toward the stairs, but turned back when I reached the bottom step. "Oh, and Garrett. The dinner was $300. I charged it to our card. I figured since you planned it, you wouldn't mind paying for it." The next morning, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. Garrett was already gone, probably to his brother's house, where he always went when he needed to complain about me to someone who would take his side. I made coffee and sat in our kitchen, looking around at the life I'd built with a man who thought so little of me that he'd orchestrate my public humiliation for entertainment. The house felt different somehow. Lighter. Like a weight I hadn't realized I was carrying had been lifted off my shoulders. I called a divorce lawyer that Monday. Her name was Rebecca Chen, and she had been recommended by Ashley, who had gone through her own messy divorce 2 years earlier. "Tell me what happened," Rebecca said, and I did. All of it. The anniversary dinner, the abandonment, the months of emotional distance and subtle cruelty that had led up to it. "I'm sorry that happened to you," she said when I finished. "But I have to ask, are you sure you want to proceed with divorce? Sometimes couples can work through these kinds of issues with counseling." "He planned it," I said. "He planned to humiliate me as cruelly as possible, and his only regret is that it didn't work the way he wanted it to. I can't come back from that." "Then let's talk about your options." What I learned over the next few weeks surprised me. Because I'd been so focused on trying to save my marriage, I'd never really thought about what ending it would look like. But I had more power than I'd realized. The house was in both our names, but I'd contributed just as much to the down payment and mortgage payments as Garrett had. I was entitled to half of everything we'd built together. More importantly, I was entitled to build something new. While the divorce proceedings moved forward, I threw myself into rediscovering who I was outside of my marriage. I started writing again. Really writing, not just the occasional journal entry or grocery list. Zoe helped me set up a LinkedIn profile and connected me with people in her marketing firm who were looking for freelance content writers. Within a month, I had 3 regular clients and was making almost as much money working part-time from home as I had at my old job. Ashley introduced me to her yoga instructor, and I started taking evening classes. Mira and I began meeting for coffee every Sunday morning to catch up and plan our weeks. I felt like I was waking up from a long, dreamless sleep. The best part was watching Garrett's confusion as I refused to play the role of the devastated, desperate wife, begging him to work things out. When he came by to pick up more of his clothes, he seemed genuinely baffled by how well I was doing. "You seem different," he said, looking around the house that I'd started redecorating. "I feel different," I agreed. "Are you seeing someone?" he asked, and I could hear the jealousy in his voice. "I'm seeing lots of people. Friends mostly. It's amazing how many relationships I neglected while I was focused on trying to fix ours." He didn't have an answer for that. "Delilah, I've been thinking. Maybe we moved too fast with this divorce thing. Maybe we should try counseling after all." I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing. No anger, no hurt, no longing. Just a mild sort of pity for a man who had confused cruelty with cleverness. "Garrett," I said gently, "you planned to humiliate me on our anniversary because you thought it would be easier than just asking for a divorce. That's not the behavior of someone who wants to save his marriage. That's the behavior of someone who wants to be able to blame his wife for ending it. That's not." I didn't. "It's okay," I said and meant it. "I'm not angry anymore. I'm grateful. Grateful. You did me a favor. You showed me exactly who you are and exactly what our marriage had become. You freed me to stop wasting time trying to fix something that was never going to work." The divorce was finalized 4 months after that anniversary dinner. I kept the house, half our savings, and my maiden name, which I'd never legally changed in the first place. Garrett married his coworker Brenda 6 months later, the same Brenda he'd sworn was just a friend throughout our entire marriage. I sent them a congratulations card and genuinely meant it. They deserved each other. My writing career took off faster than I'd dared to hope. Within a year, I was making more money than I ever had in my old corporate job, and I was doing work that actually mattered to me. I started a blog about life after divorce that gained a following, and eventually, I wrote a book about finding yourself after losing yourself in someone else's expectations. Zoe, Ashley, Mira, and I started having monthly dinner parties, rotating between our homes. We call ourselves the Second Act Society. Women who refuse to accept that their best years were behind them. But the most important thing that happened was internal. I learned to trust myself again. I learned that my instincts, my feelings, and my worth weren't dependent on one person's opinion of me. I learned that sometimes the worst thing that happens to you can also be the best thing, if you're brave enough to use it as a launching pad instead of a landing spot. A year after the divorce was finalized, I was having dinner at a new restaurant downtown, the kind of place I never would have felt confident enough to go to alone when I was married. I was celebrating the publication of my book, and I treated myself to a nice bottle of wine and the tasting menu. Halfway through dessert I saw them, Garrett and Brenda, being seated at a table across the restaurant. They looked exactly like Garrett and I used to look. Him checking his phone constantly, her trying too hard to make conversation, both of them going through the motions of romance without any of the actual feeling. Our eyes met for just a moment, and I saw something in his expression that looked almost like regret. Not for how he'd treated me, I realized, but for what he'd lost when he'd driven me away. I raised my wine glass slightly in his direction, not in mockery but in genuine thanks. Then I turned back to my book, which I'd brought to read over dessert, and forgot all about him. The waiter came by to refill my wine. "Celebrating something special tonight?" he asked. "Always," I said, and meant it completely. "If you've stuck with this story to the end, here's what I want you to know. You are never trapped. Even when someone you trust tries to humiliate you, tries to make you feel small and worthless and stuck, you have choices. You can choose to see their cruelty as information rather than truth. You can choose to respond with dignity rather than devastation. You can choose to build something beautiful from the rubble of what they tried to destroy." Garrett thought he was giving me a lesson in humiliation. Instead, he gave me a master class in my own strength. The night he abandoned me at that restaurant, I learned that I could handle his worst behavior and still find a way to turn it into something powerful. I learned that my worth wasn't tied to his treatment of me. I learned that the opinion that matters most is the one I have of myself. Most importantly, I learned that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of a much better one. So if you're sitting somewhere right now, feeling humiliated or abandoned or like you'll never recover from what someone has done to you, I want you to remember my story. I want you to remember that dignity is a choice. Strength is always available to you. And sometimes the worst night of your old life can become the first night of your new one. That anniversary dinner was supposed to be the night Garrett finally broke me down completely. Instead, it was the night I finally woke up completely. And that, honestly, is the best anniversary gift I could have ever received. 2 years after that fateful anniversary dinner, I'm sitting in my home office, the room that used to be Garrett's man cave, putting the finishing touches on my second book. This one is about rebuilding your career after major life changes, and my publisher is already excited about the advance orders. The morning sun streams through the new windows I had installed last spring, casting warm light across the desk where I've written thousands of words about resilience, self-discovery, and the courage to start over. The room looks nothing like it did when Garrett lived here. Gone are the dark leather furniture and sports memorabilia. Instead, it's filled with plants, books, and artwork from local artists. Pieces that actually speak to my soul instead of just filling space. My phone buzzes with a text from Zoe. "Lunch at 1? I have news about the promotion." I smile, typing back. "Absolutely. Can't wait to hear everything. This is my life now. Friendship dates that I actually keep. Career news that excites me instead of threatens me. A social calendar filled with events I choose, not obligations I endure." The irony isn't lost on me that Garrett's cruelest act became the catalyst for the best years of my life. Sometimes I wonder if he ever realizes that. If he ever sits in whatever life he's built with Brenda and wonders what would have happened if he'd chosen compassion over cruelty that night. But honestly, I don't wonder about it for long. I'm too busy living the life he accidentally set me free to build. Last month, I received an email from a woman named Jennifer who had read my blog. Her husband had done something similar, not exactly the same, but cruel enough that she recognized herself in my story. She was scared to leave, scared to start over, scared she wasn't strong enough to rebuild. I wrote back immediately. "You are stronger than you know. The fact that you're questioning whether this is okay means you already know it isn't. Trust that voice. It's trying to save you." She wrote back 3 weeks later to tell me she'd filed for divorce. That's when I knew for certain that sharing my story, all the messy, painful, embarrassing details, had been worth it. If my humiliation could become someone else's inspiration, then Garrett hadn't just failed to break me down. He'd inadvertently helped me build something that could lift other people up. The best revenge, it turns out, isn't proving your ex wrong. It's proving yourself right. It's becoming so genuinely happy that their opinion of you becomes irrelevant. It's building a life so fulfilling that you can look back on their worst behavior and feel grateful for the redirection. I close my laptop and head to the kitchen to make coffee before my lunch with Zoe. As I wait for the coffee to brew, I catch my reflection in the window and barely recognize the woman staring back at me. This woman has laugh lines around her eyes from genuine joy, not forced smiles. She stands up straight because she has nothing to apologize for. She wears clothes that make her feel beautiful because she dresses for herself now, not to avoid criticism. This woman is everything that scared, diminished version of myself could have become, if she'd just been brave enough to believe she deserved better. The coffee finishes brewing and I pour myself a cup, adding just a touch of cream the way I like it. Not the way Garrett preferred it. Not the way I thought I should like it to be a good wife. Just the way that tastes best to me. Such a small thing, but it represents everything that's changed. I make decisions based on what brings me joy now, not what avoids conflict. I choose my own preferences instead of molding myself around someone else's expectations. My phone rings, and I see Ashley's name on the screen. "Hey, beautiful," I answer. "What's up?" "I just wanted to check in before your big lunch meeting with Zoe. Are you nervous about whatever news she has?" "Not nervous exactly. Excited maybe. She's been hinting at something big for weeks. I love that for her. And for you, having friends who share their good news instead of making you feel bad about your own success." Ashley's comment hits me with unexpected force. She's right. In my marriage, good news had become something to downplay or hide, because Garrett always found ways to diminish my achievements. My friends celebrate each other's wins like they're our own. "You know what's funny?" I tell Ashley. "I spent so long thinking there was something wrong with me because I couldn't make my marriage work. But it turns out I'm actually really good at relationships. I just needed to be in them with people who actually liked me." "Damn straight you are," Ashley laughs. "Okay, I'll let you go get ready for lunch. But call me after. I want to hear all about Zoe's news." After we hang up, I realize I'm still smiling. This is what genuine happiness feels like. Not the frantic, desperate kind where you're trying to convince yourself everything is fine, but the steady, quiet kind that doesn't need any external validation. I finish my coffee and head upstairs to get ready for lunch, passing the photo gallery I created in the hallway last year. It's filled with pictures of me and my friends, me at book signings, me traveling to places I'd always wanted to see but never felt free to visit. In the center is my favorite photo, the four of us at last year's Second Act Society Christmas party, laughing so hard at something Mira said that we're all doubled over. I look genuinely happy in every single photo. Not the careful, controlled smile I perfected during my marriage, but real, unguarded joy. That night at Marcello's, when Garrett walked away from our table, he thought he was walking away from me. But really, he was walking away from his chance to be part of something beautiful. He chose cruelty over curiosity, punishment over communication, destruction over repair. His loss became my liberation. His worst became my beginning. And if that's not poetic justice, I don't know what is. As I prepare for lunch with Zoe, I'm reminded of something my therapist told me during those early months after the divorce. Healing isn't about forgetting what happened to you. It's about changing what it means. For a long time, that anniversary dinner meant humiliation, betrayal, and proof that I wasn't worthy of love and respect. Now it means something completely different. It means the night I stopped accepting less than I deserved. The night I remembered that I had friends who would drop everything to support me. The night I chose dignity over devastation. Most importantly, it means the beginning of the story I was actually meant to live, not the one I'd been settling for. If you're reading this and recognizing yourself in any part of my story, please know this. You are not trapped. You are not powerless. You are not defined by how others treat you. You have the right to be celebrated, not tolerated. You have the right to build a life that feels authentic to who you are. You have the right to walk away from anyone who tries to make you smaller. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the person who tries to break you will accidentally set you free instead. That anniversary dinner was supposed to be the end of my story. Instead, it was just the end of the chapter I'd outgrown. The rest, the best part, was just beginning. Thank you for watching. If you want more videos like this, please like, subscribe and share.